first of all, we are so honored to have this panel. Last year, this sort of happened as well, where we were in planning and the guest list presented sort of an opportunity to have a conversation that we couldn't say no to. So when we saw that Carol and Ali were going to join us, I reached out to their team and said, what are the chances that we could have a conversation? And so for everyone here, everyone knows Carol. She has been a part of the BeautyMatter community, a huge advocate of independent beauty brands. And so we have this moment kind of in beauty history that we get to capture and have a conversation of sort of a passing of the torch, if you will, from Carol to Ali. And I love that they're two amazing female leaders in our industry. And they are an inspiration to all of us. And we've learned so much. So thank you so much for saying yes. And thank you for your team, who is always so supportive and making it happen. So let's dive in, because I also want to make sure that we have enough time for people to ask questions. So Carol, we're going to start with you. You shared in our Person of the Year interview that your beauty journey began in the lipstick aisle of an independent Southern drugstore, or Southern California drugstore, where you tried every Revlon lipstick and memorized all the shade names.
That's right.
So it started early. Can you take us back and share what the industry was like in sort of the 80s, and what compelled you to build your brand, your career and your brand, your personal brand in beauty?
So I started a very long time ago. It's been published recently that I've celebrated my 40th anniversary at L'Oreal, but I actually started even 10 years earlier, so I'm celebrating this year 50 years in beauty. I went to Vassar College and put myself through school and came out with loads of student loans. And I also came out during a recession. So I stood in an unemployment line, and I got a job at Gray Advertising working on the Revlon business. And so that's really how I started to monetize my interest in lipstick.
Did you get your job because you listed all their their lipstick names?
No, the person in the unemployment line didn't even know about those kind of things. So basically, I get this job and I start working for 12 creatives, and pretty soon, now Mad Men didn't exist at that time, but pretty soon they were all going out for their 3 martini lunches, and I was writing scripts. So I guess I was Peggy at the time. And so that started my love of beauty and my love of product to express and my love of creativity. And then after that, I went to Cheeseboro Ponds to get a MBA on the job. But the whole time, I was thinking there's this brand that I love. They only make hair color, and its name is L'Oreal. But I had remembered hearing the phrase "because I'm worth it" when I was in college, when it was first born. And that made me really want to combine my love of the product with my love of that message. And so that's what made me really sink into beauty. And because I'm worth it, really planted that seed.
Ali, so welcome to your first BeautyMatter event. It's a little like baptism by fire around here, but thank you for rolling with the punches. I also hope it's not your last one. But can you share a little bit about your background and journey at L'Oreal as well?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't think it will be my last event.
Good.
So I've been at L'Oreal actually 24 years. Carol hired me a long time ago. I was a summer intern on her team and always admired this amazing woman who was running the show of L'Oreal Paris. And so after my internship, I had an opportunity to come back, and I worked on hair color as well when I started on Excellence and Preference, the brand that created the tagline, "Because I'm worth it." And so it was an amazing opportunity to work on this amazing brand with a woman leading the business 24 years ago. And so my journey at L'Oreal, I'm a marketer at heart, as Carol is, and I've sort of twisted and turned throughout the L'Oreal world, working on a number of the brands in the consumer industry and increasing responsibility. And most recently, before taking this role, I was president of the L'Oreal Paris brand, which also is a job that Carol held for many, many years. Clearly, she hired me when she was in that role. And I share this story. It was, when I started at L'Oreal, Carol was a woman that I've always admired, an icon, right? And it was like this aspiration, maybe one day I could have that job. And then when the job was offered to me, it was really a very humbling and emotional moment for me to literally be like, oh my God, I'm going to sit in her chair, literally, and sort of, oh my God, it was sort of like an I made it moment, something that I had always imagined and dreamed of, and then here it was. So it was truly like a wake up moment. I felt a deep responsibility to carry on the legacy that Carol had created about this beautiful brand that's all about women's empowerment. And it was really an honor. So, yes, from a career development, it was an achievement, but it was, personally for me, I felt this deep responsibility of how was I going to live up to this legacy and take the torch at that moment. And so here I am again, facing another milestone in my career, following Carol. I think, you've been a mentor my whole career. So here I am again in this moment of, oh my gosh, how am I going to follow this amazing woman and sort of continue the legacy, put my mark on it, and see what we can do.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I think we all have a lot to thank Carol for, because I can only imagine what being a woman sort of in the industry or in any industry was 50 years ago. Okay. And so thank you for showing us a path and inspiring us. But, in an age when building a career no longer usually entails staying for any length of time in a business. I look at CVs now and it's like 18 months here, 2 years there. But there seems to be something special about L'Oreal and the culture of L'Oreal, because people stick around. I think, Ali, you're probably a testament to that. Like, there is a sort of a path to growth. Mm-hmm. So can you, maybe, Carol, we can start with you. What is it about L'Oreal that sort of kept you around?
So L'Oreal is magical. L'Oreal really embodies such a human spirit, and I always felt, moving from my first 2 experiences into L'Oreal, that L'Oreal understood that beauty is not superficial from the moment it was born, and that it was really the key to building self-confidence for women. And we believe that, and so it creates this whole culture that explores not only product and business, but how beauty fits into the entire culture. So it's far more interesting than beauty as a transaction. It also is global, and so you feel like you have Paris at your fingertips. You can go to Shanghai. You can do all these fantastic experiences, but mostly it's like a country, right? We're a nationality. We're called L'Orealians, yes. And basically you become obsessed with this huge community that, and then bottom line, I always say it's like the Olympics as well. The smartest people work at L'Oreal. I'm not talking about me specifically, but I'm talking about it just in general, that you meet really smart people, and that's exciting to surround yourself with the smartest people in the world.
Yeah. Ali, what was it for you?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything Carol said, but I think when people ask me why have I stayed, I tell people it's sort of 3 Ps. It's people, products, and passion. People first, as you said, the most brilliant people, creative, diverse. It's not, in marketing, there are people with backgrounds that you wouldn't expect. But even in sales, finance, operations, like a diverse group of people that are always bringing new ideas. An amazing portfolio of products. And I think, okay, we always talk about products, but I think what that means is you can have multiple careers even within L'Oreal. So every time you get bored or every time you're feeling stuck, there's always another opportunity. And that's really what's kept me there is, I've moved around a lot. Most of us have. And it's because every time there's, you plateau out, there's something new adventure to take. And that's the benefit of being in a large corporate, a big company, whether it's different brands, different geographies, different functions, people move all the time. And then the passion, and that's what you mentioned, is there is this magic, there is this sort of like inner drive, whether it's like inner drive for perfection or success or accomplishment or ambition. There is something in the culture that just drives people, and it's a bit of like a theme throughout the buildings, and you just feel it. And it drives the pace, it drives the creativity, it drives the thinking, and you're never bored because of it.
Carol, you obviously have amazing business acumen, but you are also have a reputation to being very committed to mentorship. And it's not just the people who work for you. You're such an advocate for founders, and you're always willing to take the time to talk to a founder, regardless of how small the brand is. And for independent beauty brands, like that is super meaningful. What key learnings from your career can you pass along to leaders in this audience around mentorship?
I think mentorship it's incredibly valuable, but a true long-term mentorship, not a one-off or something that really can change somebody's life if you happen to have a conversation at the right moment. And one of the reasons why I will always talk to a founder is I admire their courage so much. And I think I didn't do that. Wow. And I learn as much and get as much joy and as much excitement from the exchange with the founder as I hope they do. And so for me, it's just a very mutually enriching experience that keeps you going and provides this way of just always making your job meaningful and with purpose.
One of the things that I find really interesting is that you both started your careers in marketing, and yet you found yourself in this M&A function. I started doing what is now sort of the Beauty Index, but our M&A report. It was even pre-BeautyMatter, and it was when it just first started, sort of this transaction. And I remember the very first piece we did. Scott Gerfine and I had a strategic agency, and I was thinking, how am I going to market this? No one cares about case studies. And I started noticing that people were asking me, the marketing branding person, who invested in this? What was the multiple? And I was just like, I don't know, Google it. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And so I started compiling it. And the first one was Manzanita's investment in Byredo. So it was that long ago. But I think sometimes marketing and branding in sort of that M&A and investment scheme is sometimes an underrated skill. And I sort of love the fact that you both came from that background. Ali, what are the skills and experiences that sort of paved your way to this new role in overseeing M&A?
So, look, there is a big financial component, but there are experts that we work with who support that. And I think in the end, at least what I'm learning, I'm new to this, is it's really so much more about finding the gem, identifying a need, understanding consumers, and having sort of that marketing consumer brand mindset to assess, okay, is this brand going to sustain for years to come? The financial side will come after the fact, but in the end, what's unique and different? What's special? What's magical about the brand? Have they struck a chord with consumers? Are their products differentiated? Like, have they really filled a white space? Yeah. And that's really what M&A is about. The financial piece comes after, actually, and that's frankly how we do it. Which is it's much more about the brand, the consumer, the business first, and then the numbers kind of support it.
Yeah. I mean, the involvement of money in beauty over the last decade has shifted dramatically. Venture capital got it came kind of wound in a D2C bow. And it really changed everything,
Yeah.
almost making it really difficult to compete if you didn't raise money. And now we're sort of seeing a shift back to bootstrapping, sort of getting traction, and I think maybe building sort of healthier businesses that are more sustained. But Carol, what do you think it takes to be successful in this ecosystem of M&A, and what's your favorite thing about the function?
My favorite, so what it takes to be successful is incredible patience, because so many of these relationships and transactions, if they're done well, take time. I've always been a bit resistant to discovering a brand once it's hired a banker, because then you're on a timetable that doesn't allow you to understand if you share the same values. And if you really, it's not just about is the brand great, but will the brand's values and the founder's values really fit with the L'Oreal values, and will it be a good marriage? Because none of us want a bad marriage, right? So it's really important that we understand and take the time. So patience is critical. Being able to work, and I've expressed this a lot to Ali, who comes from running a day-to-day job, and you get on that treadmill, and I said, you just have to work all the time in the gray.
Yeah.
And you have to create your own energy, because clarity is hard to come by in this situation as you're trying to align all the stars to make a deal happen. So, and I've forgotten your second question.
What's your favorite thing about the function?
Being part of the external beauty world. When you're working for a big strategic, as you said, we're a country, we're a nationality, so everybody gets really caught in the internal boundaries of L'Oreal. And yet, one of the things I was so excited to kind of share with Ali is that suddenly this world, you're exposed to a new ecosystem that is so exciting, with, honestly, people who are definitely as smart as L'Orealians. And it's just exciting to be able to meet this whole universe.
Yeah.
Ali, what are you most excited about as you sort of fill Carol's shoes?
Yeah, I think.
And they're always fantastic shoes, by the way.
They are always fantastic. I think, it's true when you work internally on a brand, and especially a brand like L'Oreal Paris, which is big and weighty and a heavy responsibility. We tend to be, while we're very focused on the consumer, we tend to be very insular in terms of how we work. And so it's, and very operational, like the day-to-day. We're delivering a number, delivering a sales target, like lots of objectives we need to hit. And so for me, this is a great sort of, even a learning experience for me to swing to the other end of the spectrum and really think much bigger, much wider, dream a bit, big strategies of like, where are the next frontiers? And that's really kind of freeing, actually, and sort of opens up and wakes up a different part of my brain to think, okay, instead of like, what are we going to do this week? It's like, what's out there for the next 5 years?
Yeah.
And that's really exciting. And then to just meet the people who are delivering all that. And to think in a much bigger way of what are the opportunities, what's the possibilities, and then how can we make the match with L'Oreal and finding those interesting fit opportunities.
Yeah. Carol, you always have such great advice for entrepreneurs, and since COVID, every year we all think, oh, it's going to get back to normal, and the hits just keep coming. But I also think that, yes, we've got some headwinds, and, it might be tough for the foreseeable future. But I think there's also in these times so much opportunity if you're just looking for it. What advice would you give to sort of the entrepreneurs and people running sort of the businesses of tomorrow, like in this moment?
I think in this moment, you really have to assess exactly what makes your brand, and focus on that, and not starting to just put Band-Aids on everything. It's really hard to do, but I think it's also a great time to kind of right size. I'm on a terrific board, and I went to a board meeting, and they were looking at all the tariffs that were going to hit them, and they were about to hire, it's a nice sized company, they were about to hire 68 people. And they were wondering, I said, time out. Time out. Like, do you really need to hire those 68 people at this particular moment? And you can always, really, if you just stop and think, what is the most important part of the P&L? Focus on making the P&L as healthy as you can at this moment. And it's amazing the creative solutions that you can find. I love the thinking that can happen when you just must be that good. And so, and don't give away the ship. I always feel so sorry when I'm looking at a cap table and you've worked so hard to, earn your freedom. That's why you're doing this. And, just don't give it away.
Yeah. I think that, we work in one of the best industries. It's incredibly resilient. And, I think, I launched a brand in 2008, and it was the first time Barney's said no to me. And they're like, well, we need to make sure that you're actually going to produce it. And I was like, well, I always have. As soon as we had bottles, it was on the shelf. But things change, and everyone gets much more conservative. But I think there's also opportunities that happen if you're in a good cash position and you have inventory. And I'm excited for sort of the brands that are going to evolve and come out the other side of this as well.
I agree.
There's so much innovation happening right now.
Yeah.
Ali, so I think everyone wants to know what your vision is for the M&A space within L'Oreal, but also within the U.S. market.
Yeah. So, Carol has created the vision in a way for the M&A team. I have no intention of radicalizing it in any way. But it's, I think, as you've just said, the last 5 years have been challenging years. The consumer has shifted so much. The way consumers look at beauty, the expansion into health and wellness, we've just heard, longevity, all these new terms that are redefining what beauty is. And so that's what's most interesting to me, is how do we identify those opportunities that sort of take advantage of that expanded definition? And what are the things that really are going to change the game? Where are those big white spaces that will be really incremental to what we do? So that's kind of my headline of what I'm looking for. It's not brain surgery.
Yeah.
I think anyone who looks at the L'Oreal website can see what we're really good in, what we're really not good in. So it's filling the holes of what we're not good in. But I think what's more interesting is looking beyond the scope of what we think beauty is today to how it's being redefined, and thinking about all of those opportunities. And that's really where I want to kind of tackle and take the M&A scope.
If I can add to that, it's so interesting because not only do we need, and do you need to assess like what's the next big category that we want to go in, but getting a big company like L'Oreal to get everyone in line that has a vote on what new categories are we going to go into. We're both looking externally, but then trying to convince internally that yes, it's worth jumping to a new category. That's such a huge decision for a company like L'Oreal to enter into a new métier, and it requires a lot of deep thought. So there's like a double challenge, internal and external, in terms of the game.
True.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And we're a global company,
Yes.
and so the trends are not necessarily the same in North America, Europe, Asia. Now we're responsible for North America, but today everything is global.
Yep.
So that adds another layer of complexity.
That it is an interesting point because it is, in big companies, there are obviously market responsibilities, but it is so dynamic, and the consumer is global. And I think the American market is obviously the largest, but also one of the most competitive in the world. And you see sort of these emerging markets that are also sort of so exciting. Do you also look at sort of some of those markets and what's happening as it relates to sort of M&A in North America?
I think we have to. I think the trends more and more move around the world, technology has made it that everything is happening immediately. So consumers are seeing the trends. We have to see them too, and they're coming everywhere. So absolutely, we're looking in all the emerging markets, you know, and trying to see who's going to impact who and how that all is going to come together. I think we have to. It's a requirement.
Yeah. Well, we have time, and I know it was very important to both of you that we had time to take some questions. So I know we have some microphones if anyone has. Okay, someone in this room has got to have a question. Okay, we have some questions.
Always that moment.
Someone's got to break the ice.
Hi, Carol and Ali. So great to hear from you. Ali, my question is for you. You are coming up behind this amazing legacy that Carol is leaving. What is your hope in, I'm not going to put a time on it, but X amount of years, the legacy that you leave and the person coming up behind you and
Oh boy.
what they're going to have to improve upon?
Honestly, I have no idea. You know, I honestly, I think this is going to be a great adventure, and I'd like to think there is no end date at this point. I think it's about kind of where's the journey and where does it go. You know, this could be kind of a 2 to 3 year rotation. I hope not, because I hope I love it, and I hope I contribute to some great things and find some great businesses. And this could be my legacy for the next 10 years, you know. That would be a great vision for me to keep this going and establish myself, you know, as Carol has, as an authority and a representative for L'Oreal in the external community.
When L'Oreal puts somebody in an M&A position, it's not meant to be short-term, it's not rotation.
So apparently
Yes,
you're not going
right.
anywhere.
So yeah, I think it could be a while. I hope so. Otherwise, I haven't done it well.
I think we have Katie, you had a question here.
Thanks. I mean, Ali, no pressure, right? I promise my question is not as weighty. Thinking about those new frontier beauty categories, or those filling in those gaps, are there any specific categories that you're particularly really excited about?
I mean, I think, I mean, we're hearing more and more about health, wellness, the intersection of skincare, hair care. There's not a specific at this point. We're sort of studying the universe. But I think this idea of longevity is truly becoming more and more essential theme in the interaction with beauty, and that can manifest in many different places. So there's lots of great opportunity there. But as you can imagine, we have a big makeup business, we have a big hair business, like we can't forget those as well. So there's you know, we look at the opportunities, and actually what's so exciting is there are many places that we can go. Yeah.
Hi, how are you? I'm Alfonsina, and it's such a pleasure to sit here and listen to your stories. Very inspiring. You mentioned about looking at these emerging brands and all the key elements that attract your attention. What do you feel for an emerging brand that is ready for acquisition versus further incubation?
You're more experienced.
Okay. So L'Oreal, we look for a particular size of critical mass because we don't want a brand to be so small that it gets lost in our ecosystem. We look for the ability for it to be globalized. That's really important, to take an American brand that can be globalized. We also really look for a brand that has a soul, that has layers. So that means it needs to have existed ideally for more than 3 years, because it's hard to develop that longevity approach to a brand. And then lastly, we always look for high double-digit profitability at a minimum. So that takes time. We've always thought as a company that we want to acquire brands where the founders have figured out that profit is an important part of the business model, and not to just give that to the acquirer that obviously has maybe deeper pockets, but that for us is not the point. We want to buy a brand that is really financially healthy at the same time that it's a beautiful brand.
Jill.
That was my question.
Oh.
Really? How do you vet a brand, and what's important to L'Oreal in terms of whom you look at?
Yep.
When do you start having conversations? Because, as you said, you like to have conversations for a long time before there's a process. But I think sometimes founders think it's too early. But is it ever too early?
No. Well, at least I don't think it's too early because you learn from each other. It depends on how you use your time together. But again, you can deepen the relationship. I mean, probably the earliest, I literally was at a Sephora store directors summit in August 2016, and I saw Joe Cloys of Youth to the People hammering his mission statement on their booth, and they had not sold a product yet. So that was before pre-sales, and we exchanged cards, and then 5 years later, we acquired them. But we kept in touch every 4 months, every 6 months, and sometimes it was just because we wanted to find out what was going on. It was a very, I would say, innocent and good agenda to learn about each other in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I think also that time that Carol's speaking of, that's what makes it not a transaction.
Yeah.
Yes.
A transaction is like a one-off. Okay, you want to sell, we want to buy. Okay, done. You reference it's like a marriage. You've got to date a little bit.
Yeah.
Take the pressure
get
off.
to know each other and see if it's going to fit and kind of understand the essence of the brand. And so, I fully agree. Just establishing even the informal relationships and following along and sort of connecting over time is really helpful in that.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Ralph from AS Beauty. Carol and Ali, we're big fans of you guys. When looking at an acquisition, do you look for more of a brand that has a great brand story, or do you look for an operational efficiency, something that you could tuck in to the L'Oreal ecosystem?
I'll take that. Operational efficiency, we believe we can bring that. I mean, we'd like to find something that is at least coherent and not a total mess, which you can find. But no, we really, really look for not only the brand, but a business model. For example, when we acquired Urban Decay, they were #1 in social media, and L'Oreal at the time globally didn't have a clue because it was a new métier. So combining a great brand with a great new skill set is really the kind of perfect equation.
So I think we have time for one more question. Yep.
Thank you so much. Question, since you've seen so many brands succeed, develop so many successful brands, and you've seen the industry through the department store, mass retail, evolution into specialty, evolution into e-commerce, just curious your perspective for brands thinking about the distribution landscape and the trade-off between exclusivity to a Sephora or an Ulta, how you think about Amazon, the timing, et cetera. I just would love to hear your perspective on the evolving distribution landscape.
Wow, we don't have all day.
You have 35 seconds.
It's such a powerful question. But seriously, having a great brick and mortar partner and then a great D2C business is kind of the perfect combination. Managing exclusivity is something that we study like crazy, how to be exclusive and optimize it, and then how to break that exclusivity without killing your business. I mean, those are all models, and brands are demonstrating different ways to do it, and it's, I think at the heart of your question, it's critical to get the right balance between your distribution partners, or you're just not going to win. So such an important part of the equation.
Well, we have no more time. I think we could have a whole day just learning from these two ladies. But thank you so much for creating this moment for all of us. Carol, thank you.
No, we are so We are so excited that you asked us to pass the baton,
Yeah.
Kelly. And so for us, the fact that this is happening at Beauty Matters is a great testimony to you and what you've built since you started this amazing, amazing.
Something
conference.
makes me think
Bravo.
that we haven't seen the last of you, Carol.
No,
so
no,
you are always welcome.
Thank you.